Hello, Year 4, and welcome to today's geography lesson. Today's lesson we are going to be continuing with our study into plastic pollution, and today we're really going to be focusing on the effect, the impact that it may have on marine life. And by marine life we mean living things, living creatures in the seas and oceans around the world. Okay, now before we get going, I want to share with you a phrase. I want to see what you think. What do you think the phrase landfill means? Maybe you've heard of that before. Maybe you've not. Maybe you think, oh, what could that mean? If you want to, pause the video, and if you've got someone there you can have a quick chat to. What do you think landfill is? Pause the video and come back once you've had a chat. So landfill, Year 4, is very straightforward idea. It is basically when land is filled with rubbish. Okay, there's a picture of it there. Okay, it is something that has gone on for several years now. When I say several years, probably since about the end of the Second World War, so about 70, 80 years. Now, what landfill involves is large holes are dug into the earth and millions of tons of waste is dumped inside them. It is then covered in earth and it's basically left to rot. Okay, now this the majority of the rubbish which gets put into your black bins at home will end up in landfill. Some of it will be filtered out, but the vast majority of it will go into landfill. Okay, now why do you think this happens? Why do you think the solution at the moment for so much what we call household waste that you would throw out at home, goes into landfill? What problems do you think that might create? A couple of questions to have a think about, and perhaps answer on your paper before we carry on. So this diagram basically illustrates what happens with landfill. Okay, and it's sort of a cross section. So, like I said, a large hole is dug. A liner is put in. It's a plastic liner. The rubbish goes in. There are ways things are put in place to make sure that it's so things aren't really affecting the local environment too much. So when we learnt about water last term, remember we talked about groundwater is water that would filter down into the ground and eventually flow underground to rivers and streams. So wherever there is a landfill site, there will be a way of monitoring on here that the groundwater isn't becoming too polluted. But that hole will eventually be covered over, it will be earthed over, and whatever's inside will be left to rot. Okay, now, do you think it is a good or a bad process? Or is it that straightforward? I expect a lot of you are very quick to jump to, oh, it's bad. And you see a picture like that and you think, oh, that can't be good. And you're right, it's not. That amount of rubbish is terrible. However, we are now on a planet with over 7 billion human beings, and that number's only getting greater and greater by the day. 7 billion people produce a lot of rubbish. Now that rubbish has to go somewhere. Okay, we can't just pile it up outside our houses. Okay, it wouldn't be what we call very sanitary. Very soon we start getting ill with with infections and things like that. It's not healthy to keep rubbish nearby. That's why we get rid of it. That's why we put it in the bins. But something has to happen to it. So is landfill kind of necessary? Or should governments, councils, people that are in charge be trying to do more to eliminate landfill? Now, I can guarantee when I was younger, when your parents were younger, we didn't have as many bins at the front of our houses as we do today. Okay, so we live in Derbyshire. I'm assuming most of you live in Derbyshire. If not, you live in a local authority where you have a very similar bin system to what we have. So outside our house, we have a black bin, we have a brown bin, and a green bin. So we have our black bin for everyday waste. Okay, we have our brown bin for recycling, for cardboard, plastic, and metal. And we have our green bin, which is for garden waste and compost waste. So food waste can go in there as well. But I can remember when I was your age, we just had one bin and there wasn't recycling. Okay, you could take glass recycling to sort of like a local car park, and there'd be bins that you could put glass bottles inside of, and you could perhaps get rid of your newspaper, but that was about it. So there is more, and fortunately that has reduced the amount of rubbish that goes into landfill. And I don't know about your house, but actually our brown bin is the bin that gets filled up the quickest. We have a black bin, but it never gets more than about half full. Okay, so I mean, we're quite happy with that our brown bin, because we know that everything that goes in our brown bin goes and gets recycled, hopefully. And it can be reused, because this scene on the screen now is what we are trying to avoid, this plastic pollution. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some more stark truths now from what we had on Monday. So plastic doesn't rot away. So all the plastic that's ever been made is still in existence somewhere on our planet. Okay, so like I said on Monday, the first plastics weren't really invented. It's not discovered, it's not a natural product, it's made, it's synthetic. First ones weren't really created till like the 1800s, and even then it didn't get popular till about 100 years ago. Now, I wonder if you can guess how long it takes plastic to break down. By that I mean how long it takes to decompose. So like if I had, I don't know, a potato, something natural. If I went and put that potato in the ground, very soon, not like within minutes, but within a few days, that potato will begin to decompose. That means it starts to break up, and eventually it'll just break down into the soil and it won't be there anymore. And that'll probably happen over a few weeks. Plastic, however, if I was to put a plastic bottle into the ground, do you know how long it would take to start to decompose? I wonder if you can have a guess. Go on, pause the video now and have a guess how long you think it will take to decompose. Well, Year 4, scientists believe that plastic won't start to decompose for 450 years. 450 years. Put that into some sort of perspective. It's 2021. 450 years ago was the Tudor period. I think, correct me if my maths is wrong, but 1571? 1571? If you put a plastic bottle in the ground, it would have decomposed by now. Now, plastic wasn't invented till 200 years ago, and even then, it's only 100 years ago it started getting popular. So I can guarantee that all the plastic that's ever been made is still around, and it is somewhere on our planet's surface. Something to think about. It's not going to go away. Now, when it's exposed to sunlight, it does break down into smaller pieces, but it never properly disappears. But you look at those little bits there that are on that beach. What's to say that a wild animal doesn't mistake that for something that it can eat, something that's edible? Okay, it's a lot more difficult to recycle plastic than like glass, aluminium, so it's like foil or paper. Okay, it's a lot harder to break down. Now, fortunately, companies are finding new ways to use plastic. Okay, so I'm a big sports fan, and it turns out that 10 years ago that I bought a football shirt that was made of recycled plastic bottles. So the plastic is broken down, it's spun into like thread, almost like cotton, and then it's used to help make fabrics. Okay, so that's one way in which plastic is being recycled, or what it says as downcycled. Okay, so it can be broken down and then molded into something new. Plastic drinks bottles can be made into things such as fleece jackets, plastic chairs. Okay, now we are living in a world now where thankfully more and more things are being recycled, but still no way near enough is being recycled. Now, I want to start thinking about a phrase, single-use items. That means single-use plastic is things that you can only use once and then it gets thrown away. There's 3 perfect examples there on the screen. Earbuds. Can't use them again. Might clean out your ear, which actually apparently you're not supposed to. You can clean out your ear, but you're not going to use that bud again. What do you do with it after you're done? You throw it away. Cutlery. Plastic cutlery that you might get from a takeaway or a fish and chip shop or something like that. I guarantee that doesn't get used very much, more than once. So that gets thrown away. Plastic straws as well. Okay, you may have noticed that if you do get sort of a naughty McDonald's every now and then or something like that, that the straws now aren't plastic anymore, that they've started to try and introduce more sort of paper-based straws for this very reason. Remember the fact that we had on Monday's lesson that nearly half the world's litter comes from fast food packaging. I wonder how many of those have straws inside. So here's another fact. There's over 8 million tons of plastic deposited into the world's oceans every year. So you guys are, 9 years old, so 9 times 8, so 72 million tons of plastic have been deposited into the oceans in your lifetime. That's a lot of plastic. So it often washes up on beaches like this one in Mumbai. Now we learnt about Mumbai, didn't we, in RE last half term in India. Okay, look at that beach there. It doesn't look like the sort of beach that you might want to go to the seaside on and build sandcastles. Not that beach there. And this is a fact that we've already heard about, isn't it? That by 2050, it is thought the plastic floating in our oceans will weigh more than the fish. I think that's absolutely terrible. We're going to have more plastic in our fish in your life, more plastic in our seas in your lifetime than we will fish. I think that's really, really unfortunate. Up to 1,900 microfibers. So microfibers is tiny bits of plastic that you won't be able to see with your eye unless you had like a microscope. Can be released from a single garment when it's washed. So like a fleece top. When you put it through the wash, nearly 2,000 microfibers can be released. They can become lodged in the intestines of fish. Okay. Scientists think in the UK, these plastic fibers were found in 72%. That's nearly 3/4 of tap water samples. Okay. Now I'm going to warn you, one of the images that you're about to see isn't nice. Okay. Does include a dead animal, but it is a stark truth. It is a truth that we shouldn't really turn a blind eye to. It's not this one. It's coming up just to warn you. Another study found that 90% of the world's most popular bottled water brands contain tiny pieces of plastic. So water that we are buying off the shelf has tiny pieces, 90% of it, 9 out of 10 bottles, have tiny pieces of plastic in. It's worrying, isn't it? Now, there's that much plastic in the ocean that, and the way that water moves around our planet, it moves around in currents. Okay, so on the screen there you can see the Pacific Ocean, and the way these currents move is that eventually 2 currents move past each other and they create sort of like not like whirlpools, but the any rubbish that's on top of them will begin to gather together. And the thing is, they're getting so big, they're almost like their own little islands now. Okay, and they're called the Pacific Garbage Patches. And it's massive floating plastic islands. Okay, there's 2 of them at the moment, one in the west near Japan and China, one in the east near America and Mexico. Can you believe that? There's that much plastic in the Pacific that it's almost creating its own little islands. Now, plastic debris means sort of the little tiny bits floating in the sea, can kill animals. Okay, sea creatures, marine life, don't find it hard to sort of, well, they won't understand the difference between food and what we know as plastic. Around 100,000 marine mammals and turtles and 1 million seabirds are killed by marine plastic pollution every year. Now, it's the next image I'm going to show you for, which isn't a nice image, but it isn't one that we should close our eyes to. Young albatrosses are fed plastic waste by their parents, which can kill them. And that's because the birds don't understand, they don't realize what it is that they're doing. And we know that sort of mother birds sort of regurgitate food for their young, or they'll pick up bits of plastic they see floating in the sea. Oh, could be a fish, could be something, some food, and they feed it to their young. Ultimately ends up killing them. And you can see there, it's sort of it's the body of a dead bird, and that plastic has been inside in its body. It's what it's been fed. It's what it's been eating. Now, if fish eat fragments of plastic, if we in turn eat fish, which a lot of people do, I eat fish. I think fish is nice. I like fish. But if we're then eating that, then we too are we're eating that plastic as well. So perhaps it's time that we started to change some of the things that we do. Now, we can't say that, oh, right, we're just going to stop living with plastic because it is such a big part of our lives, but perhaps we can look at things in a different way. Okay, we use a lot of plastic in our lives, and we use a lot of single-use plastic. Remember, plastic items that have a single use. It serves its purpose, and then we throw it away, like the earbuds, the straws, the plastic cutlery. Can you think of any more single-use plastics? Maybe see if you can pause the video and write down some single-use plastics that you can think of. Well, I can think of things sort of like the plastic films that cover cartons and things like that. And the one that really, really irritates me, and I think I've already said this, is when you buy vegetables from the shop and they're covered in plastic. And these are vegetables that are grown in nature. Why do they need to be covered in plastic? It really confuses me. I think if you buy like a cauliflower or a cabbage, that cauliflower or cabbage has survived for months on end growing in a field somewhere. So why all of a sudden does it need to be wrapped in plastic and starved of oxygen? I just don't get it. Now, can you think of any that aren't single use, that might be plastic that is designed to be used again? Okay, I can think of some. The sort of like a key one that we do in our house if we ever sort of have a takeaway meal, and it comes in sort of plastic cartons. We don't throw those plastic cartons away. We keep them and we use them for storing food because they're really handy. Okay, and if we were to throw it away, we make sure it goes in our brown bin because it can be recycled. Now, how do you know if something can be recycled or not? Well, you might find on the packaging a little recycle triangle with 3 arrows going round in a triangular circle almost. That is the recycle symbol. It means more often than not that packaging can be recycled. Your task for today then is, can you think of a way that you can make changes in your life so that we stop being so dependent on single-use plastics, so that we can start to say, you know what, I'm using less single-use plastic and there's less plastic going to be going into the world's seas and oceans. And on the worksheet that's attached, you're going to see this diagram, okay? In the left-hand box, you're going to think of a single-use plastic like this. A bottle of pop is a single-use plastic. So I'm thinking, if I went and bought a bottle of Pepsi or something from the shop, that is a single-use plastic. But by making a change, how can I make a change in my life to help the environment? I'm thinking now of my thought bubble. I could reuse the bottle rather than throw it away, so I could use it again for another drink, or use a bottle made of reusable plastic. Okay, so water bottles that are designed to be washed and then reused, rather than having a drinks bottle which more often, so is got one use and then normally gets thrown away. So that's just an example. I'd like you to come up with 3 of them year 4, and there's a worksheet on the web page that you can use to formulate your ideas. Okay, I realise that some of this session may not have been easy to hear, and that there are some things that may have sort of upset you. But this unit really is about us, and think about our value for this half term. It's responsibility, and our responsibility to this planet that we live in, we're a part of. Okay, and we're looking after that planet. So how can we treat it with a little bit more respect? Okay, and how can we make sure that this planet is still going to be beautiful for future generations to look after? Okay, so this is just the start of our work that we're going to do. Okay, and we're going to try to change the world. Okay, remember, change starts with you. So what change can you make? Great effort today, year 4. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.